Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the SWAN RFID Users Group. This is the Spring 2022 session. Just wanted to do a quick round of introductions for everybody here, and then we will get started. I'm Ian Nosek, Systems Administrator at SWAN, and one of the chairs of this users group.
I am Aaron Sievers. I am at the Elmwood Park Public Library, and I am the other chair for this group.
I'm Stephen, the IT and System Support Manager for SWAN.
I'm Michael Zarmak. I'm one of the system administrators here at SWAN as well, and I'm just lurking in the background today.
Hey, Michael.
Hi.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Bartlett, Access Services Manager at LaGrange.
Rebecca.
Hi, Jeanette Hess. I'm at Berwyn and for collection management, and we just started using RFID in January.
Fantastic. Welcome.
Sarah's with Berwyn as well, so she
Oh,
may
okay.
not be chiming in just yet.
No worries. Hello, Sarah. All right. Well, I wanted to start actually with Rebecca Bartlett. She was attending Kasugi last week, I believe. Yep. So if she's just going to do a quick recap of some of the RFID related stuff that came up in Kasugi. So I will turn it over to Rebecca and we'll go from there.
A little portion of a video, and let me just explain what's going on here. So basically, what this was is the executive Q&A session, which was the final morning session of Thursday, April 21st. And the participants could send in questions to the executives at Cersei Dynex. It's kind of a unique and interesting way to communicate with Barrett and some of the other executives. So what you're going to see in this video is Heather Lubchansky is the moderator of the discussion, and she is going to be positing a question to Carla Clark regarding RFID compatibility and Blue Cloud circulation, which is still in development. So let me go ahead and see if I can get this queued up for you here.
Yeah, you're a presenter, so you should be able to share at this point.
Okay.
Great.
Okay, let me know, make sure everybody can see the sound, have the sound.
Are you able to turn it up a little bit, Rebecca? I don't know if that's gonna.
And considering how we will most effectively support RFID. This may be a situation where we will have to require customers to install some browser plugin. We certainly do not want to force folks to have to purchase new hardware. So we would be working to make sure that whatever hardware you have might create our own browser plugin that would still be able to read the tag and flip the security bit. We've got some folks who have pretty good knowledge of RFID technology, and I've had some preliminary conversations, but we recognize, for one thing, RFID is very essential for sites that want to adopt Blue Cloud circulation. So it's definitely something that we are looking at to hopefully deliver before the end of 2022. And I'll let Matthew speak to Symphony Web.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and pause that just because we don't really use Symphony Web. So,
sure.
Okay, that's it. That's all I needed to share out of mine.
Okay, no worries. So it sounds like they're working on the RFID integration for Blue Cloud, which is actually what our next part of the agenda was. Before we get there, Rebecca, was there anything else that you heard or anything interesting at Kasugi that might be pertinent to the group before we discuss kind of the Blue Cloud RFID compatibility?
Yeah, so There were two sessions where RFID was mentioned, and that's kind of where I got the idea to show that clip. Carla had done an initial overview of Blue Cloud circulation. She did, and I had asked at the Blue Cloud staff meeting that you guys had yesterday for SWAN. I was like, where are we at? And I know that SWAN is still in the testing phases. And so it kind of perked my ears up a little bit when Carla mentioned in the Blue Cloud circulation demo that she's like, oh, well, RFID is not, the RFID systems that are out there right now are not, we don't have a compatibility right now with the Blue Cloud circulation as it is now. And she did, say both in the Blue Cloud Circ demo as well as the clip that I just showed, she did make it clear that they were aware that that was going to be an issue that they needed to address just because of the sheer number of CERC Dynix libraries that are using RFID. And the idea of having to purchase additional add-ons and, basically in addition to the equipment that we already have is, it just seemed like that was going to be a deal breaker for those RFID libraries to make that transition away either to the hybrid model of workflows or Symphony Web and Blue Cloud Circ, or just to, Blue Cloud Circ in a certain way. So, it was interesting to me that they had mentioned it, Carla had mentioned it in both of those presentations, just that they were aware that that was something that they needed to work on, but it's just not there yet.
Okay. And I think it's safe to say that when they discuss integration, they're talking sort of a native integration. So without like a buddy application, because I know a lot of the RFID vendors sort of use a buddy application in conjunction with workflows now. So I'm assuming that when they discuss integration, they're discussing native integration.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, and I mean, it's like we have such a weird setup now, and I know because we started on 3M and then now we're on, like in our library, it's just such a goofy setup that we have now for every time we get a new pad, it's like we still are switching between modules and workflows as we go from check-in to check-out. I mean, I would love to have something more seamless where I just press, wouldn't it be great if the software knew that the book was already checked out and now we have to check it in? Like, it's just... we're already like making that jump.
Sure, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think on the plus side, I'm less concerned about Blue Cloud RFID compatibility in the fact that theoretically the existing buddy apps should still function, as all they're really doing is reading the tag information and then passing it to a field. And since that's kind of the reality that most RFID libraries are facing now, it's nice to know that, I mean, while it's not going to be a native integration right away, that it might, it should still work more or less the same as it's working now for the RFID libraries. And again, I think by the time Blue Cloud is fully rolled out with SWAN, maybe things will have changed from CERC Dynix side as well. But I don't think anybody running anything. I don't believe Workflows has any native integration that's actually functional at this point.
No, it is.
It is,
yeah.
okay.
They finally added EnvisionWare to that list.
Oh, okay, I couldn't remember.
I mean, it was a little bit late compared to some of the other ones, but it worked.
Okay.
We were able to uninstall our buddy app.
Oh, fantastic. Okay.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah.
And is that the same at LaGrange, Rebecca? Or no, you said you're still jumping, right?
We are running the 3M software, the old software, and we have Biblioteca software, and then we have, it's kind of confusing because we have some 3M hardware that we're kind of, we have some computers that are running the old software for 3M because we have the old hardware, and then the newer hardware is, anyway.
What about it?
That works great, I will say that.
Yeah, right. What about it, Berwyn? And remind me which vendor you guys are using?
We had EnvisionWare.
Okay. So are you using you have the native integration, it's all set up with workflows without the buddy app?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I would say, for your cases when Blue Cloud goes live, if they haven't gotten the native integration going, that might be something where like the buddy app might have to come back into play. But I think a little too early to be, I don't want to be alarmist about it, but I think it's a little too early in sort of the grand scope of Blue Cloud and its, wide availability to Swan, that I'm hoping that things sort of, shake out while we're, running through, the actual deployment and going live with Blue Cloud. But yeah, I mean, it was very interesting. It does sound like they're working on it, and they're just sort of not quite there yet. Um, so it is certainly. I think a couple people sort of heard that statement and were like, "Well, I don't know how this is going to work," and certainly it's a valid concern. I just, I wonder if it's just a little alarmist in that case, and it might all kind of work itself out, or at the very least, integration with the Buddy app and Blue Cloud will at least make it a feasible, if not perfect system. At least it'll function. I think that would be more problematic for the InvisionWare libraries who are running the native integration at this point. So I think it's something that we'll just have to keep an eye on, or I guess keep an ear out is more likely. So if anybody hears any rumblings about the Blue Cloud RFID compatibility, please feel free to post up a thread in the forums, and we can kind of track things there. I think would be helpful. I know some of you probably have your ears closer to the Cersei Dynex rail than I do at times. So yeah, that's definitely something to be aware of as we kind of move forward down this path of Blue Cloud.
Yeah, cautiously optimistic.
Exactly, right? I
But
hope
that is,
it's, yeah, I hope it's just, oh, sorry, go ahead, Aaron.
oh, I was just gonna say it's really exciting though, because up until I think even yesterday, I heard somebody here on staff describing Blue Cloud to doing training and describing Blue Cloud to somebody else and saying like, well, it's never going to support RFID, and just kind of being resigned to the fact like it was just never going to happen. So now I can be like, never say never.
Yeah, I mean, at the very least, I'm hoping it's just a case of under promising and over delivering. I mean, we'll see. It might,
Yeah.
I think it remains to be seen, but I think there were a lot of ears that pricked up when they were saying, "Oh yeah, well, it's not quite there yet." So
I'm
again,
just heartened to hear that they're even like aware of it and that it is a priority for them.
right.
I don't know how I have a priority, but like just the fact that they're not like, who's using RFID these days? I find that like encouraging.
Exactly. They still, are considering it a critical feature that a lot of libraries rely on. So, hopefully, again, I feel like we're still, kind of trudging along with Blue Cloud in general and moving forward. And hopefully, as that project really gets, some additional steam behind it, that things will kind of fall into place as we start going live. Yes, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see kind of how things shake out with Blue Cloud as a whole. But on the plus side, those of you who are using the Buddy applications, I see no reason why those can't continue to work. And then, for the InvisionWare libraries, it may be a case of, having to utilize that Buddy application again for a short period of time. But again, time will tell. We'll kind of see how things progress and how Cersei Dynex's timeline is looking. Is there anything else related to either Kasugi or Blue Cloud that we want to discuss before we move on? Anything else of note? I didn't attend Kasugi, so I think
This is my first time, and they did say that it will be virtual again next year in 2023. So if people are interested, it's going to be the same week in April.
Okay, good to know.
The same day. So this was my first time attending, so I was pleased with the sessions. Just really it was really very focused on Blue Cloud. Very, very focused on Blue Cloud.
Great, that's awesome. So I want to just jump to the next section of our agenda, and that's just basically, it's been 2 years now since everything changed. So what I'm kind of curious about is, have libraries seen their numbers sort of go back to pre-pandemic times, especially in relation to self-check, or has that number actually changed? And are you seeing more people utilizing self-check over staff assisted, or is that number kind of, I'm just curious to see sort of how, people's interactions with everything these days, if they're more prone to using a self-check versus going to a staffed workstation, or kind of how you all have been seeing the numbers over the past 2 years and sort of how they've trended.
Well, I will say at LaGrange, I have a director who loves statistics like more than life, so we are at 65% of our circulation is self-check right now. Before the pandemic, we went to open holds. Then we took that away because we were afraid of touching things and spreading the disease. And then we went back to the open holds when we learned that, we were not transferring the virus over surfaces. So when we went back to open holds in the front and just allowed people to no contact, pick the holds up and then walk them to the, we have 4 self-checks in the building, then our self-check skyrocketed again. I mean, I'd be happy to share. I've got it somewhere. I don't even have, I should just do a graph because that'd be kind of a good visual. But yeah, we're averaging 65% of our circulations.
Okay, great.
At the self-check.
And I think after this, I might post a thread to the forums and just see if we can get some more libraries to kind of chime in on that, because I know there's only 3 libraries that are represented here today. So yeah, I would be curious if we can get some more to join in, because I always felt, during pandemic, like the more I can do by myself without interacting with other people, the better. But I know not everybody shares that viewpoint. So yeah, I'm just curious to see if it's dramatically changed sort of the circulation landscape, if you will. How about at Elmwood Park or Berwyn?
Now I'm pulling up our statistics right now because
Sure.
I want to see. I can definitely say just anecdotally without looking at the numbers that we are kind of getting back to the level where we were last summer when we had our hot vac summer and everybody was like, it's over, we're good.
Right.
And so we saw our numbers really rebound until, September or so, and in October when things started to shift again. So we're kind of getting back to that level. We're still not anywhere quite near pre-pandemic. But I can also just say, from observing people, I just saw somebody today, there are 2 people sitting at the circ desk, and there's a self-check machine directly across from the circ desk, and I watched a lady just come up and completely bypass them and just do the self-check, and just and I was like, this is pretty typical. I see this quite a bit. So I think of the percentage of checkouts, even though checkouts overall are still a little low, I think that split has definitely shifted. And I don't know, I need to crunch the numbers to see exactly how much, but I definitely see it just walking through the halls.
Okay. So anecdotally, it seems like it's, the self-check usage has definitely increased, even though overall circulation might still be, lower than normal.
Yeah.
Hopefully, in the next couple months, things bounce back, unless, there's another surprise. So, yeah, I just think it's kind of interesting to see where the patrons' heads are at, and if there is still concern about, engaging with staff. And then do you guys still have the plexi shields and all that? And is that something that I know a lot of libraries basically love them at this point and want to keep them forever? I don't blame you, having worked the service desk for many years. That would have been nice to have.
I get it, but on the other hand,
the problem is the plexi is too low, so we can only put 2 books through at a time. So it takes if somebody brings a stack of books, then we're like, let's just go the self-check, because it's you're sitting there trying to feed the books through this
Sure, yeah.
But yeah, I've been definitely self-check.
No, I was covering the desk the other day and was getting reference questions, and I'm like, I'm sorry, I can't hear this. The sound is just bouncing everywhere. Can you? And so like they're great, but on the other hand, I'm like, this doesn't work for my ears. I need a hearing aid or something.
Yeah, there's always the, oh, I'm going to try to talk through the plexiglass, and oh, you can't hear me. Well, let me pull a mask down, and then I'll try to talk. You still can't hear me? Okay.
They
Yeah,
pull their
Totally.
mask down and then stick their head between the plexiglass
yeah, exactly.
so they could hear me better without the, and I'm like, why can you hear me better without the mask? The mask doesn't cover your ears, it covers your face.
You got to lean your head down and slide your face under the book slot. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, now I can hear you.
All of it.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's going to be certainly a metric to kind of keep an eye on as, the world starts hopefully returning to, whatever we want to call normal at this point.
Sure.
But yeah, it's that's always been sort of my curiosity throughout this, because I know self-checks have been kind of reutilized at times for staffing, and especially when curbside service was in effect. I think libraries have found uses for self-check stations that they may not have considered before. And I wonder if the pandemic has sort of opened eyes more in the administrative side to see if maybe more self-checks would be useful, or if they feel, if you guys feel like you have enough at this stage. Yeah, it's just kind of gauging if the number of self-checks available is sufficient for the number of transactions that you guys see on a monthly range.
Well, like we have four, and I think you guys have more at Elmwood Park, Aaron, but we only have 4 in the building because we've got 1 upstairs, 1 in children's, and then 2 in the lobby. So I feel like people, I don't know if, especially with the DVDs, they have trouble with the ones, like they would rather bring the DVDs to us because we do have issues with the paired tags a lot, especially the older ones. So it does seem like with the self-checks, like if people can do the books by themselves, that's fine if it's in another location, but they will come downstairs to the lobby to bring it up to the desk, because a lot of times it'll be like, take it to the desk because it doesn't pair the
Sure.
tag correctly. So I do see that a lot with DVDs, as opposed to like books, we never have problems with the machine.
Okay.
But DVDs and CD books, we do have issues. So that in that case, it's kind of like, I almost think we should have more like in the lobby, and then just, although sometimes like we have 2 different machines and people don't realize that they're both self-checks because they look different.
Sure.
And so we're like, no, like we'll have 2 people standing at the one, and I'm like, no, just come over here, and use this other, like we'll just be like, come over here. But that's the only thing I see with ours is like the DVDs that people are like, oh, they get frustrated and then they'll take it back to the lobby.
That's in a scenario with a dual or multiple tag item.
Yeah, we have the Stingray tags and then the square tags on the case. Like the Stingray's on the disc and then the square tag on the case. But it just, for the older ones, we are losing functionality. I don't know if it's just getting old or the heat or something.
Sure. Okay.
But yeah, that I do see where it's like, oh, then they go, oh, I have to take this downstairs, and then they'll bring it to the lobby.
So do you have a self-check in the lobby at this time, or are they kind of spread throughout the library?
We have 2 self-checks in the lobby and 1 in the children's department, which is just right across from the lobby. And then we have the second floor has their own self-check. Okay. So we have 4.
But it seems like the one on the second floor is kind of your primary that people are using. I mean,
the one that people are using most is the front one. We have the brand new Biblioteca one just as you walk in the door, so people really like that one just because it looks so much better than, like, our 3M ones are like the old dinosaurs from the Dark Ages. And yeah, but that one, I think they just love the new one, and then they don't realize that the other ones are also self-checks because they all look old and like,
that makes a lot of sense.
They work perfectly fine. They just don't look as new and shiny as the Biblioteca new one.
Sure. Well, I think that. Sorry, were you going to say something, Aaron?
Oh, I was just agreeing. Like, I totally get that.
And I think that is a great segue to discuss kind of signage. I know that's been a question that has come up a lot, and I know we've had a couple examples posted to the forum as well. But if we want to kind of discuss library signage, I know the joke that we've always said, at Oak Park is you can put as much signage as you want, but despite it being a library, nobody reads anything. So, I'm curious because there are very different worlds of thought when it comes to signage, and some want to keep it as minimal to non-existent, whereas others love signage. So I know you guys posted some examples, but if you want to sort of discuss sort of where you're at now, how you think the signage can be improved, and maybe we can get some ideas from the group.
Yeah, and my question, and I appreciate all the signs that people posted. I guess my question to the other libraries would be, how do you explain it in one single sign that, use the RFID tag unless it's from another library? And I think, and it may be just that for the libraries that have open holds that are getting those transits in, maybe that's a unique situation. But yeah, that's I think where we get tripped up. Like anybody can bring a stack of books and just throw it at the self-check and it's fine. I think the confusion is you have 5 books from 5 different libraries and they have barcodes in all different places. And, just the idea of telling people do this except when you have to do this. I think that part of it is like
need a really
like
complicated flow chart.
Yeah, like a flow chart. Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. I'll put them on the door for you.
Yeah, so here at Berwyn, we're very new in this. We just started in the beginning of the year. So we're really still ironing out a lot of things. And when it comes to, we have 4, kind of backtracking a little bit, we do have 4 stations, 2 on the first floor near the main entrance and 1 on the second floor and down in reference. So it seems, so we don't have the stats yet, and our department manager is not here with us today. She would have loved to talk about numbers as well.
Sure.
But and we're just getting people back in, so to really compare, we don't have that yet. But so we're very much still in the tutorial part of getting patrons, with all the changes that we had. And we have our holds are behind circulation still. So anything coming from other libraries has to be checked out at this point with them, as well as we have a lot of like special kits and dolls and things like that they have to be unlocked. So we have all those special things that, you have to take this to circulation still. So that's how we're dealing with those type of things in relation to signage and everything. So everything, I think we're still just kind of taking notes of what's working, what's not. And so that was the main reason we joined this group, so we could hear what's going on out there. So yeah, our main thing that we see here in collection management, because we're kind of like the department that was in charge of setting this all up, is kind of finding all the things that we thought were, properly tagged and they're coming back up, even though it has a tag on it and it's not working or with that sort of thing. So, or kids see these tags now and they're like, what's this? And they want to peel it off. And,
of course, yeah.
All that, it's all that kind of patron thing. So we're just still trying to train them and train us as well. But they seem to, some of them seem to gravitate right towards them. Like you said, with books, they go right to it and, have not much of a problem with it. I think the ones I see most are up here at the children's department. I think the parents like being able to just go ahead and check them right out and then they can just leave the building. So with the exception of a few things.
Sure.
That's kind of where we are right now. So.
Okay. And then as far as, do you have, signs kind of directing users to the self-checks or?
Yes, we try putting, we've got signage everywhere, like even like when they weren't operational yet, we're like coming soon, and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, we did as much as possible and still, and all of our signage, and again too, yes, people don't read, but we try to make it more, with icons and, less wordy and direct and to the point type of thing, but with a positive spin as possible. Because you always want to have that, well, it's on the sign when they start to complain about something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Sort of thing. So, yes. And
Yeah,
that's where we are at this point.
I know with, when I was at Oak Park, signage was ideally kept to a minimum. But I know what I did with the self-checks is sort of created a little just home screen that was, sort of up that you needed to, touch to continue, and basically just did a couple graphics. At that time we were using, I think it was the yellow bands for transit. So it's basically like, if it doesn't have a yellow band, you're all good. If it has a yellow band, scan the barcode. And that, it's hard to gauge how well it actually worked. But I feel like that, it wasn't as problematic. And again, when you have something on the screen, the user is essentially forced to interact with it in order to use the self-check, which I thought was an interesting way to do it. Obviously, I don't know if how configurable, for instance, the 3M Biblioteca hardware is, or software rather. I do know that Envisionware One-Stop is pretty customizable, which is nice. So I don't know, have you, for the Envisionware libraries, have you considered doing something sort of, as opposed to like physical signage, more of a digital signage within the actual software? I think at one point we had like a video clip kind of showing how to place items and things like that we were able to embed into the self-check software. That was TechLogic software. And again, that was,
yeah,
a long time ago.
Yeah, the Envisionware, we're on an older version of One-Stop. We're on One-Stop 2, and I know they've upgraded everything to One-Stop 3. So I will be exploring that very shortly. But One-Stop 2 gets pretty high marks because the whole intro screen and everything is animated with really good graphics that just kind of like show like, scan your library card to start, and then the next screen shows an animation of putting books on the pad. And so like we actually have super minimal signage around the machine. I think the hardest part is just making patrons recognize that it is a self-check machine. Like once they're in front of it, they're pretty comfortable with what to do.
Sure.
But yeah, so it's usually just like, there's a self-check right there. and then they're like, oh, okay, I got this from here.
Have any of you guys thought about hiring a sign flipper to just hang out in the lobby?
Yes, I think that would be rad. that is, yeah, I would probably take a turn actually. Been working on some pretty sick tricks. I think it's going to be pretty awesome. So, but,
I mean,
going back to the previous question about, kind of like we only have 2 self-checks. We've got one upstairs and one downstairs. And I don't think we have any, when we did our lobby renovation, we thought about adding another one, but just space-wise, it just wasn't going to work. But I think the pandemic has really brought to the forefront this quality over quantity argument, because now they're getting used, they're in demand. And before it was very easy for people to overlook the fact that they were running on ancient hardware and maybe sometimes would crash when you'd enter your email address or something.
I remember seeing, the don't use an email address,
which I watched this morning, the lady that was using the self-check, instead of going to the people at the circ desk, crashed the machine, apparently did not read the sign or didn't understand what it meant. I don't know. But yeah, so that's my next project, is to go through, and we got new hardware. We're going to install the new version of One-Stop and just really revamp that experience, because people are using them more and want to make sure they're having a good time and not crashing to desktop whenever they try to enter their email address.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, great.
The tech ones are so easy to use. I think the issues we have really with ours are, if you have a stack of books and like 3 of them are Oak Lawn and 2 are Berwyn and 1 is, and also the fact that our friends at Thomas Ford are the only ones in the area that don't have RFID. So
yeah,
no offense to Thomas Ford, but we're really trying to like bring them over to the dark side with us of RFID. But yeah, I think that side of it, like, oh, but like these scanned, but these didn't. And then the other thing we have, and I don't know if maybe in Envisionware you guys may have a better way of doing this, but we don't have an option to log out. So it just sort of sits there and then it like times out. And then we have a lot of people that are like, why are these weird books checked out to me? And it was because someone else came up behind them.
Oh
So,
man.
so there's no
So that
like
part of
finish
it,
or I'm done button or anything.
it
It's
just
dependent
sort
on
of like
timeout.
fades to black, it's
Interesting.
just, I don't
Oh
know.
man.
Hmm.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
times out
Envision
after
where it
a
has
little
like
bit,
a.
but it's if there's several people in line and if they go quickly and the other person doesn't even realize like, oh, I'm supposed to scan my card, then it'll just somehow check them out on the previous person. So I know
Oh.
that part of it, that's
Mm.
been an issue for us just because if it's not like, I mean, like our patron computers have like the big like log out, log out when you're done, but that's been an issue where, people will come up and there's like these weird books checked out to my account and
And have you tried
it's somebody
Yeah.
else.
modifying that timeout and shortening it to see if you can sort of?
We could, except then you have people who have like a stack of books and then it's just, I think we've played around with the time, but it's rare that that happens, but I do know that has been an issue.
Okay, that's good to know. And again, sorry,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Oh no, what I was saying is we really try to not have people in line. We really try to send them to the other self-checks just for that very reason. Like, so they're not waiting, but also that they don't see another person's account.
Okay. Yeah, that is interesting. I think, I know at this point, One Stop is the only one that I sort of engage with on any sort of regular basis, that's what I have installed on my machine for doing, some basic testing and troubleshooting. And I know that like One Stop, I think has a global timeout and then like a page timeout, which is basically the interactivity timeout. I don't know if there might be multiple timeouts to look at in the 3M Envisionware world. But I would just be curious to see if, if you're set to like a 60-second timeout, and that's too long, like if reducing it to maybe 45 seconds will help sort of curb that
We definitely have the
potential.
other side of it where somebody can't finish their interaction because it does time out, but it's just because they're taking a while. I mean, sometimes
Sure.
it takes a while to like move the books, like from if you have a bag or something. We definitely see both of those, but
Yeah, that's why
I
I'd
know we've
wonder if,
played around with it.
yeah,
That's
that's why I'd wonder if the like an interactivity timer, so for instance, every time a book is scanned or read, that timer sort of resets.
resets it.
Again, I'm not terribly familiar with the back end of the 3M Biblioteca stuff at this point. It's been years since I've looked at it, and I'm sure it's changed quite a bit. But yeah, I would wonder if sort of modifying that timeout value will sort of help prevent that from happening. Obviously, I think because you're in that situation where you have multiple self-checks, but sort of people line up behind the one because they're not paying attention to the other.
I guess it's the first thing they see when they come in the front door.
Sure.
We
Yeah, I
will
mean,
gently guide them to the other one.
okay. Yeah, I feel like everybody needs like, big flashing lights saying self-check.
Well, we have giant columns, and there's all these columns, and the self checks behind the column, and it's just like people can't find the bathroom in the lobby, they can't find a self check. The
Sure.
self check is in front of the bathroom, but behind the column.
Right. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, that is So they're
But
not
that's
right next
definitely
to
an
each
issue.
other at Lagrange. They're sort of in different areas in the lobby area.
We have the 3M, the Biblioteca one, the brand new one is right as you walk in the front doors,
Okay.
the sliding doors. And then the next one is just behind it, but there are two columns in between.
Sure. Okay.
Blocking your view, as it were.
Right. And there's no better location that that could maybe be shuffled around to make it more
It does.
visible,
I mean, it does have to have connectivity, and we have a weird
course.
setup in our lobby.
Yeah.
That's always the tricky part. Yeah.
We only have wire or cables in certain areas.
Sure, of course. Yeah, interesting. Well, yeah, I think that's certainly the signage discussion. I think should continue going. I would love to see other libraries get involved. I'll post.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely interested to see for libraries that have open holds, like how do you distinguish between, like how would a patron ever know what's an RFID library and what isn't? I don't even remember who's an RFID library.
Exactly.
I wouldn't expect it, but I think they do notice that there are certain libraries that do have the tags. And then they also notice they notice the libraries that have the barcodes in different places too. So that part of it. But that's kind of what I would like to have for the signage is like, well, sometimes the barcode's on the front and sometimes it's on the back and some of them have tags. And it's like, well, that's like a really wordy sign.
Yeah, exactly. Welcome to the wonderful world of consortiums. Yeah, yeah. Everybody does things a little differently. Yeah.
Yeah, I was covering the circulation desk the other day, and I mean, I was just trying to check out a book normally to a patron. I scanned an item probably 15 times, or sliding it on the pad, doing the whole like trying to, and then it was like, oh, right, this doesn't have a tag. Like, okay, I'll never get those 5 minutes back.
Right. And then, you always have the patrons who are like, oh, I scanned the ISBN and it's not working. It's like, oh, you have to scan the barcode that's either on the back of the item or it might be on the inside cover. It all, it all depends.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and I will say, like, in describing our experience, like we do not have an open hold shelf. And when we redid our lobby a few years ago, we had a really deep discussion about like, because everybody wants it. It's always a great idea, but we really got into the nitty gritty of like the logistics of it. And ultimately it was situations like that where it's like, well, how do we deal with the self checks and getting people to properly check out their materials? And we're like, you know what? Let's not do that. And that was a big factor in that decision. So yeah.
Okay.
With the social distancing to have the open holds in the lobby, but we still do have, it's just kind of a hybrid because I think sometimes people won't be able to scan something or they just don't quite understand how to use the self-check. We have no signs right now. We have absolutely no signage at all. And they just really have to use the prompts on the machine, which most people are fine doing that. And some people, it's like you show them one time and then they're like, this is so great, I'm going to do this. We have people that are like, I'm never going to bother you. They say that in quotes. I'm never going to bother you at the front desk again.
Until they get an item they can't scan and say, I lied, never mind.
Right, until 30 seconds later when it doesn't scan. But anyway.
I think that's...
I didn't want to bother you is like kryptonite to me. I just cringe whenever I hear that. Like, that's why I am here.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think, and Rebecca, I know probably the volume of interlibrary stuff, you probably get a lot from Thomas Ford, who is not tagged. Are they sort of your highest sort of providing library that you've come across, or you kind of run the...
It's, we're equidistant. You guys have probably heard my little rant about how close we are, but LaGrange Park, Brookfield, Thomas Ford, and us. I mean,
they're all
that's the most. And then I always say it's like circles, then it's Berwyn, like it's, then it's North Riverside. It's just kind of like goes out in concentric circles out from there. But I would say we don't have items, we have items returned from Thomas Ford, and so we set those aside.
Sure, okay.
Know that those aren't going to go on the pad. But I am so heartened by, Berwyn and everybody else who's joining RFID, because it just makes our job at the circ desk so much quicker, I mean, it was so great when, LaGrange Park started doing it. It was so great when Brookfield, Brookfield's more recent. It just really has sped up the process so much for checking in the transacts.
I really like the idea, Ian, that you had about, banding certain items. I wonder if that would be something we could explore, where it's like, if you're participating RFID library and your tag is compatible, you get a cool little, I don't know, some kind of indicator on the hold slip or on the material somewhere as a quick, indicator, like this is an RFID compatible item. The tag will scan, the security bit is in its right spot. It's like the SWAN seal of approval.
That's a really interesting idea.
Something even pops up, like something in the workflows, or I even think, I try and memorize what libraries are, but then it's like I get there and I'm going, well, Geneva, Green Hills, and Glen Ellen. Now wait a minute, is it 2 out of 3? And then, I couldn't remember.
Yeah.
It's a quiz, right? Like it's a quiz every day. It's like a mind game every day.
You got to stay sharp.
But yeah, Glenside, that too. So all the G libraries. But yeah, I think it would be great to have some way that we would see it without even opening the book. It would be great to be able
Okay.
because I honestly think, like, and I know I've talked about this in this group before, I honestly think we should divide them up. Like we should have a cart that's RFID and then a cart that's not RFID. Like I think that's how it should be divided up. But if there was a visual way to do it, it's just,
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, I
that's,
know. I know your tech services people just love putting stickers on books.
yeah, people, yeah, exactly. Stickers are
Right
good
on.
life. So yeah, that's,
has
I mean,
RFID tag.
it's honestly, and it's an interesting idea. Yeah, I think it's certainly something that warrants further discussion. And I gotta say, this has been the best group at segues because that runs really well into RFID interoperability, which is the next section of our discussion. So this kind of comes as two sections. The vast majority of SWAN libraries are using the ISO 28560-2 data model. To my knowledge, the only one that is not at this time is Glenside. And Rebecca, I know you've mentioned that you have difficulty reading Glenside's tags. They are using the old Danish tag model. And I know I've been in contact with Ian Peary over there, and they've sort of been exploring what it would take to reprogram their tags to the ISO 28560. I know Ian sent me some information from their vendor. Again, I think it's Envisionware, that sort of walks through that process. However, I'm not familiar enough with how that actually would function. That I think that's largely something that would need to be kind of configured and set up by the vendor. But they are exploring kind of making that change to become interoperable with SWAN, which I know a lot of libraries would love. And again, to my knowledge, I think Glenside's the only one that is using that older tag model. I could be mistaken, but I know a lot of RFID libraries in SWAN have kind of gone into RFID once that new ISO standard was sort of firmly in place. For instance, like Oak Park started such, yeah, so I mean, there are some libraries that have had multiple, data models throughout their tenure with RFID, but I think we're in a pretty good spot as far as the actual data model and tag readability. Aside from, and I don't want to single out Glenside, but I think they're a good example of sort of where they are now to where they want to be. And we just kind of have to figure out. I know Oak Park also did something similar with their sorter, whereas items that came back with the old, let me pick my brain, the 1856, no, that's,
Oh
God.
man.
It's 28560.
18650.
18. Oh my God, I can't remember. Well, anyway, the old one, the old standard. It's 18 something. That's gonna drive me crazy.
It'll come to you at 3 a.m.
I
tonight.
know, right? Yeah, I gotta
Out
wake
of
up
bed.
at 4 in the morning. It's like that's what it was.
Well, Oak Park, didn't they have to like peel their tags off? I mean, it was like this huge production over there. And
Yes,
I mean,
and
I think it happened multiple times, right? There was one that was a physical, and then there was one that was a rewrite, right?
correct. So what it was at Oak Park is they started before the ISO standard 15693, by the way. Thanks, Google. So anyway,
now we know.
Yeah, exactly. So they started prior to that ISO standard. So when Oak Park first went live with RFID, it was in conjunction with the opening of the new building, which was 2003, I believe. So basically, they had at that point, it was just TechLogic. It was the old, 220 tag talk first RFID tags. So those are the ones that were constantly saying, I'm a tag, I'm a tag, I'm a tag, I'm a tag, just waiting for a reader to respond. The obvious issue with the old 220 tags is that since they were constantly chirping, they had a shorter lifespan before they failed. And those tags could not be rewritten. So that was like a whole ordeal where, we're trying to estimate sort of based on the number of years tags have been in service and how many we're seeing fail, and this and that. The original assumption was like, well, it can't be more than like 10% of the collection, and that ended up being closer to a third of the collection where the tag needed to be removed and replaced. And then, of course, at that time, ISO 15693 was the prevailing standard, which was a standard that wasn't very standard. And it basically said, put the barcode here, whatever else you want to do is fine. So it was a standard in that, theoretically it could be read, but not across vendors. Like if a TechLogic and a TechLogic came together, odds are they would read just fine. But they didn't play well with other vendors. So when the 28560 standard was ratified, I'm sure it was ratified long before that, but when Oak Park determined that that was the route they wanted to take, their sorter was actually programmed so that when a 15693 item passed over the antenna, it would hold it there for a second, it would rewrite to the 28560 and then pass it along. I'm sure that took a while because I don't recall, I had left at this point. I don't recall if they were sort of manually feeding things through or if they were just waiting for items to circulate and come back through and sort of, clean up the collection that way via, just use, and then everything else, probably some weeding and things like that got rid of most of those tags. Glenside, I think would have to, from what I was reading, what Ian sent me a while back, it sounds like there's some sort of companion application that needs to be configured that basically allows that that rewrite to happen. So I actually, as things kind of hopefully quiet down, well, probably not. I'm going to reach back out to Ian and kind of see if they've made any headway with, sort of getting that project started and kind of going from there. So that would sort of bring us all into a, hopefully one big happy family where we could at least read everybody's tags and check material out. The problem with the 28560 standard is, to my knowledge, that defines where on the tag the barcode's written, how it should be formatted. It determines where the AFI theft bit should be placed on the tag, but to my knowledge, it does not specify what the AFI theft bit needs to be. And I know that some of the complaints that we see from SWAN libraries is that, yeah, it's great, the items came in, somebody was able to check them out, no problem, but then it set off the theft security gates when they left. And that's essentially because the AFI theft bit it's an on-off bit that's defined. I believe it's an alpha character and a numeric character. That might not necessarily be the case, but from what I've seen, it's, like A1 is like on and C2 is off or something like that. And just examples that I've made up. So the problem is there isn't a standard there, at least not one that is being followed. So what I would sort of love to see kind of as we progress through, the world of RFID and more libraries coming on board, is if we can sort of determine a standard for that AFI bit that at least the new libraries coming in, when they, hopefully reach out to us and say, we're going to be starting an RFID project, what do we need to know to ensure that everything works the way it needs to work? And ideally, we would say, well, it has to be the 28560 tag model, which at this point I think is a given, but also be able to define that theft bit, which would then at least allow libraries to be using the same theft bit. So theoretically, if you check out at one library or another and you're using the same theft bit, everything's happy. It won't set the gates off. Obviously, that won't really work for libraries that are already set up with a different theft bit because, again, the process of modifying that would be time consuming. and certainly staff intensive. So what I'm wondering, and I don't know if this is something that anybody else has sort of heard rumblings or experiences, but I'm wondering if we could program the security gates to look at multiple theft bits rather than just a single theft bit. So theoretically, we can say, okay, well, if we want to read and deactivate everybody's theft bit within SWAN, these are the bits that your security gate is looking for. So what I'm proposing is a little bit of homework, and I'll start a thread after this meeting closes. And again, this isn't something you might necessarily know. You might have to reach out to your vendor. It all depends on how sort of intimately familiar you are with, the way the tags are created. But if we could sort of put together a list of the SWAN RFID libraries and the theft bits that are using, what I'm hoping happens is sort of twofold. We can see what's going on and see how varied the theft bits are. And also, if we have, a couple libraries that happen to be using the same theft bit, that sort of puts us in the right direction to set a standard. So we can then say, well, we have this many RFID libraries, 30% of them are using this theft bit, which would be great if it was. I don't know if it will be. That would sort of help push us towards defining a standard theft bit for SWAN, which would then actually allow the security gates to work. I know security gates are a touchy subject at times with libraries. I know some just feel that they're generally not reliable enough, or they false alarm too often. That I know some libraries have just turned them off, and they're just basically dummy gates at this point, where some libraries really rely on not only, hearing the alarm go off, but also being able to look at, if it's a smart gate, what items set that alarm off, etc. So I would sort of like to hear from you guys to see if that's something that, we want to sort of move forward and participate and try to, develop that to basically allow those security gates to work the way they're supposed to work.
I definitely think it'd be really cool to already kind of.
Aaron, you're breaking up a little bit. Do you want to try to?
Second, calm down, internet.
Yeah, I'm not. I can't hear. Sorry, you're cutting out, Aaron.
All right.
Just heard a bunch of
I'll be right back.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We'll see you in a minute. Well, we wait for Aaron. Any other thoughts from Rekha or Jeanette?
Yeah, and I'm actually not sure, like I said, if the Glenside books are setting off I feel like they're going to be deactivated when they before they transit, right? They're going to check it in. I don't know. Maybe I don't know.
So if the item,
like, I think if it's transited to our library, I don't think it's. Maybe I'm not understanding.
The theft bit shouldn't be deactivated at that stage because it's not checked out, because it's checked in but transited. So theoretically,
so it's on their shelf, and then they check it in and transit it.
Right. If the item's pulled off the shelf, right, the theft bit should be active, and the theft bit would deactivate when the item is checked out. Again, it all depends on if the library is checking the material in and then transiting it via RFID, or if somebody gets a pull list and then they go and just scan the barcodes of the pull list, then that RFID tag's not touched at all.
We definitely use the pads for ours for transits, for out transits. I do think that the Glenside ones are setting off they are not able to. They're able to check it out with the barcode, but not with the tag at the self-checks. And we aren't able to check it out with the tag at the staff stations.
Right.
But I'm thinking, and I'm not 100% sure, and it might not be happening 100% of the time, but I think it is still setting off the security gates as a patron would walk out the door.
And I'm
pretty sure that's happening. And like I said, we haven't updated our software. I know that some of the Biblioteca libraries said that they had done some type of patch to update it. We weren't able, I don't know for whatever reason, we didn't do that yet. So, but yeah, I'm pretty sure they're still setting those security gates off, even if they're not able to, like, if you set it down on our pads, it just goes beep and it doesn't do anything.
Right. And
It
again,
doesn't check the item out or in.
yeah,
It
and
just
that's
beeps.
that's due to the data model difference. And again, as we're sort of discussing this, the idea of adding multiple theft bits to, the security gate config to look at that, it also kind of makes you wonder if there's some way to sort of add a secondary tag format as well. Because I know, for a while, Oak Park was, had to look at 220 tags and 15693 tags. So part of me wonders if, like, can we set our self checks to look at the 28560 model and the Danish tag model? That's also something worth exploring. If that's possible, that could save Glenside a ton of time in reprogramming their tags. So I think these are all things worth exploring. But what I would love is to sort of kind of put together a little bit of homework to have each RFID library sort of determine what their theft bit bits are and kind of post them up in the forum so that we can kind of start to gather those and kind of see how we can, work with them to make them more interoperable than they currently are. And that goes with everybody because I think it's Rebecca, I believe you mentioned that was it Downers Grove occasionally they would check out, but they would set your gates off, or there was another library that checked out fine, but the gates would go
Years ago,
off.
I mean, it's so funny because like Westmont and like LaGrange and Westmont started RFID the same time because we did it at the same time as the workflows or the Circe migration.
Right.
But at the time, the Downers items, basically in 2015 when we implemented ours, Oak Park was always going to be an issue because they were in the process of changing their tags over. And Downers was sometimes an issue, and their tags were a bit older. I don't know if they were like a couple of years before us. I think Elmwood, you guys were like maybe a couple of years before us too. And then, but then like since then we haven't had any issues, and I don't know if Downers made a change or if it was just, I mean, I don't see any on a day-to-day basis issues with the Downers tags.
Okay. I mean, that's good. And theoretically, I would imagine that 3M Biblioteca is using the same theft bit across their implementations. It's where you get into different vendors because, again, to the best of my knowledge, that's not standardized. So yeah, I think that would be something that would be really beneficial to the RFID, libraries as a whole to sort of have that defined and see if we can either manipulate the software to look for various theft bits or look at adding or at least defining a standard theft bit for onboarding RFID libraries. But I think that that's something that we should at least begin kind of exploring the possibility of further creating that sort of SWAN standard, if you will.
Yeah, and I'm venturing some audio here. I hope it's okay.
Yeah, no, you
but
yeah.
Okay, great. But I was gonna say we would also like our library would totally volunteer to just place holds on. If we get the master list of RFID libraries, we'll just systematically place holds for each, and compile. Like if we can't get people to self-report and kind of post in the forums, like we'll be happy to like put together a spreadsheet.
Yeah,
and,
definitely do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely doable. I think the end goal is to sort of not necessarily develop, but sort of solidify, kind of how all of the SWAN libraries are working together to ensure as seamless a, transaction as possible. Obviously, there's always going to be a disconnect between the RFID libraries and non-RFID libraries, but if we can at least get the RFID libraries to all be playing nicely together, that's going to pull, a huge burden from libraries that are encountering these issues with security gates or just items that aren't checking out in general. So yeah, I think that there's, hopefully some merit to doing this. So,
RFID also also helpful to see, like, I know that there's some libraries that don't tag certain formats, and I know that's been kind of confusing for our staff here. I'm thinking specifically like Brookfield, and I don't know exactly which ones, but I know North Lake will tag some of their AV, but not their books. It might be helpful to have that information somewhere on the SWAN site, just so we could see, because if we're going to have a master list, that's helpful. But, you know, I always get confused. So I'm like, oh, North Lake, yeah, they have RFID. And then it's like, oh, wait, okay, this is a book and this is a DVD, you know, and it's like,
Okay.
I don't know.
No, I think that's a great idea.
That might be helpful. Like if it's all and you know, and I understand that there's formats that are very difficult to tag. I mean, if you're circulating equipment or something like that.
Right. And of course, there's the Guinness
Put
books
a
that,
RFID
just won't
tag
work.
on your,
RFID the fishing pole. Yeah.
Putting a RFID tag on a Nintendo Switch game that's the size of a postage stamp.
You know what? I'm so glad you said that, Aaron, because we are having these issues, and we got a call from Westmont the other day, and people are like swapping the cases out, and it's causing like crazy confusion because and we even had somebody like pull the paper out and like put it, and it was like, so Westmont called us and they were like, wait, okay, so we've got this cartridge, and they're like reading the tiny cartridge, and they're like, but the case says, somehow the case was like, had a different thing, and then the RFID tag, and I'm like, oh no. I'm like, just send it back to me and I will try to like dig into, you know, because it was, they had taken the cartridge out of one, and then they scanned it on the self-check machine. It was like, boop, 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 this is a different title. Like, the patron was like, what is happening?
Yeah,
I was checking out a Nintendo Switch game to a patron the other day, and we don't tag ours, but since we no longer keep the games in the cases. So you bring us the case, we'll go get the game. The games are so small that we put a sticker with the number that corresponds with the case, and that sticker covers the entire artwork on the game. So like, it occurred to me, like, if I sneezed and this just like dropped out of my hands, I would have no idea what that game was until I put it in a Nintendo, and it would tell me on the screen. It's like, you know, kid gloves do not drop. This would be an organizational nightmare.
Yeah, I mean, it is tricky, especially when you're looking at material that, I mean, a Switch cartridge is barely bigger than an SD card. You know, so it does sort of, you start to question sort of how to best handle material like that. And it also makes me wonder if there's any, you know, advances in tag miniaturization that, you know, they've kind of figured out. Hey, here's a tag that's, you know, even smaller than.
It would be so nice to have small little mini tags.
And that'd be great. But then you wonder, because like the CD hub tags have been notorious for being unreliable and have bad read range, you know, and at the end of the day, it's all about, you know, the chip itself is small, but it's all about getting that antenna density to a point where they can miniaturize it and also still, you know, achieve reliability. It does, you know, get a little trickier. So I'd be curious to see if there's any sort of development out there on making a smaller tag. I'm certainly going to look that up after this.
Yeah, the smaller tag will be helpful. We definitely put ours like in an envelope, because like exactly what Aaron said, that it's like trying to write on it. So we have ours in an envelope in a cabinet. And then this, I don't know if you can see this, but oh, sorry, you can't see that. But that has the barcode on it.
Okay.
But what was funny is this had to have been a three-way switch. Because I'm sorry, I switched. I'm not saying that as a pun. A three-way issue.
Never underestimate the power of library patrons.
We had the paper from the one, and then the RFID tag from the second one, and then the third one was missing. If that makes sense.
Awesome. Yeah, that's.
I always say, like, I think it's because I've been in SWAN since I was born, basically. But I think people call me when they like have problems that they just don't understand. And like, I think Westmont was just sitting there going, "Who can we call?" Oh, Rebecca.
This doesn't make any sense. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good one.
But it really was. I'm sure it was a three-way swap. I just can't. I'm still waiting and hoping that one of them will come back.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, good luck with that. I hope it
We'll see.
kind of all
But it
works
is
out.
funny because we definitely like what'll happen is now that we only have like I guess people can only check 5 out, but they'll like swap them and then it's like then they bring them back and people are like, oh my God, this is what shows up on the screen is not what if you scan the tag, it's not
Yeah, and that just becomes
has
so
nothing to
confusing.
do with the title.
And then as Aaron pointed out, if you're applying a label to the Switch game itself, you're obscuring most of the label. I don't know. Our Switch is upstairs, so I don't recall what the back of the I don't know how much space there is before you actually get to the pins on the cartridge. But again, I think that that's also not a smooth surface because there's probably all that FCC garbage printed on the back of it.
Yeah.
So again, you get to a spot where it's like, how do we best handle this? Yeah, I think there are multiple schools of thought out there, but yeah, that'll be interesting to see kind of how
I think there's like possibilities that I think our RFID vendors haven't quite, dug into enough. And I mean, I think it's us, we need to put pressure on them. I know we still have books that are shiny and metallic covers, so we can't RFID tag or it's difficult. And I mean, I feel like that should be technology that we have in the world.
Yeah, for something to be, a Guinness book that just,
Yeah,
you can't
this book
tag
is
these, they just
notorious.
don't work.
And Ripley's Believe It or Not.
Yeah, that's another one. And that
I
is
mean,
sort
those
of
get stolen all the time because we can't, the tag just doesn't work. And, those are so like high demand. And, but yeah, that's one of those things that's like, we really need to talk to the RFID companies and say, let's come up with a better solution than just hoping people don't steal it.
Yeah, unfortunately, you get into that, there's only so many ways you can beat physics, and at the end of the day, we're dealing with radio waves, and they're pretty easily blocked. So, it definitely represents a challenge to the vendors for sure, and I think that's why, you would see people try to like, oh, I put a tag on a calculator. Why doesn't this work? And it's like, well, because the calculator's got like a lot of stuff in it that's going to interfere with the tag, and then they develop that, that giant like device tag, which is beefy, but like
Band-Aid tag.
yeah,
the orange Band-Aid.
exactly. But that's unsightly and large and expensive and
well, it costs $25. I don't know. I haven't seen a more recent, but you put, I mean, how much do you?
Yeah, how much do you value the item you're protecting to put a tag that might be worth 50% of the actual item?
And then they rip the tag off, and then where are you?
Exactly.
Or you're like, how come the Wi-Fi on this laptop doesn't work anymore? And it's like, oh, it's all being absorbed by this massive tag.
There's an RFID tag on it now. Yeah.
Attached to it.
Exactly. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of, it's an imperfect system because again, there's, they're basically trying to cheat physics, and that sort of gets into a sticky spot with publishers that want their books to be shiny and glossy and exciting and covered in foil and all that stuff. And I know that was an issue with before the Stingray tag sort of became the Stingray tag, and it was like, well, the hub tag works because there's no foil right in the center of the disc, which isn't always true because you get those double-sided discs, which tags don't work on anyway. So then the Stingray tag was like, okay, well, that has a bigger antenna. It can go through, the foil that's on the disc. But again, there's only so much surface area available to, weave that antenna through to allow it to transmit farther. So yeah, it's a tricky, kind of a tricky situation. So I'd love to see if there, what sort of developments are coming in the way of, not only tag miniaturization, but also, stronger tags and things like that, and just kind of see what's out there.
I also kind of get the feeling slightly pessimistically, but that when it started when Biblioteca kind of exited the scene, or however you want to frame that, but of just like, this is not a huge moneymaker for manufacturers, and we kind of, I don't know how much incentives they have to continue pushing the technology, and I feel like we're going to start just getting more of retail hand-me-downs. Like, oh, okay, this works really well for retail, so I guess we could adapt it for your library.
Sure.
But like, I don't know that. Yeah, so it's slightly pessimistic view, but I kind of feel like the gold rush of let's make money off RFID has kind of dried up, and vendors are just kind of like, yeah, okay, we'll look into that, I guess.
Yeah, and I think that that's a fair, view of it. I think, at the end of the day, it's got to be they need to return on their investment. And if the demand isn't there, why put the research into it? But yeah, it would be certainly something that we'll kind of see as things move along, and we'll see how many more libraries. I don't know if, off the top of my head, if any other SWAN libraries are currently investigating RFID. But we're under 20% of SWAN is RFID at this point. I think there's 17 libraries, that might be off, but it's still a fairly small percentage of SWAN as a whole. But I do think that the libraries that are RFID enabled, while in number might represent a smaller percentage, probably represent a larger percentage of circulation as a whole. And I mean, that's just a generalization, but typically the larger libraries are the ones that have the money to implement RFID and things like that. So while the number of libraries out there aren't, I'd be curious to see what the circulation statistics are of RFID libraries versus non-RFID libraries, and kind of get an idea of what our overall percentage of transaction occurs via RFID versus a traditional barcode checkout.
Yeah, and I think the more we do, if we do follow through on kind of creating some kind of a SWAN standardization for tags, and if Blue Cloud does integrate RFID into their technology, like that's just going to create a more attractive package for prospective libraries.
Mm-hmm.
So then you've got your Thomas Fords out there who are maybe on the fence, and they realize like, well, all of our neighbors are doing this, and it seems like they've ironed out the kinks. So the next time it's up for discussion, maybe they're more apt to keep trying to make it an enticing.
Yeah, and I feel like the libraries reach out to each other. I mean, I think Jeanette's director reached out to LaGrange Park because they were the closest ones that had Envisionware. And I think, there's just that discussion. And I think it also goes along with renovations a lot of times. I think that was the impetus with Brookfield, was we're building this brand new library. We need to get on board with this and promote the self-checks. So I always feel like I really promote it. If somebody asks me, I'm like, I recognize that this is a financial commitment for the library, but I know for us, it's definitely, it really speeds up the process for us, for maybe not as much the transits and the book drop and that kind of thing, but like the, just the regular check-in for us of the items, of our items. It has made such a difference that LaGrange Park and Brookfield and us, that we're all on RFID.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, it's an expenditure.
It up so much.
But yeah, if a library is planning on, spending a ton of money on a reno or a new building, it's easier to fold that in, as opposed to just saying, okay, we're going to go to, RFID, and, here's this number, and you give it to the board, and they're like, oh, I don't want to do that. But if you're already spending, a few $100,000 on a reno, well, why not? So yeah, I think that, the more that we can sort of try to develop that standard, and just make sure that we can all play nice, as it were, with different libraries with the RFID and the checkouts, I think that would certainly just add one more notch to like the pro column for prospective RFID libraries. But yeah, I think that's yeah. I think that's kind of all I had on the agenda, but I'd like to open it up if anybody has anything else they want to discuss, anything that they've noticed. Berwin, I'd love to get, a quick overview of sort of how your, last kind of quarter has been with, about 4 months at this point, almost 5, with your RFID experience and kind of how that's been going. I'd love to, hear more about how it's been.
Unfortunately, the people who could really give you a better overview are not at the meeting. So I'm collection management, which is basically our tech services.
Okay.
And then I was just texting our manager saying that we really need to have someone from CERC. join in here. And so to get a better overview, and because I know that they would have a lot of input or questions
Sure.
for you guys as well. So I've already, as people, our director just passed by and I was like, we're doing this. And so she was really happy that we were joining this group. And so
Okay,
to
great.
get information, but I just don't have access to any of the data
Sure, of
right now.
course.
So, but, and again, like I said, we're still ironing out the kinks and, you know, things like we do the same thing for the video games where we have the dummy cases, and we actually just kind of revamped it a little bit where we keep them all behind Circ, the actual games themselves in binders. I just redid this myself. And for the Switch things, which was a challenge because they're so little.
Mm-hmm.
But I always forget the name of the little, the small barcode strip that comes with the barcodes, you know, the secondary tag. We snip off the last 7 numbers and adhere that on there. It fits nicely, and just do a little BPL on there for our label. And I'm using a fine tip Sharpie on this. And then on the front, we do the same thing where each disc or game cartridge is associated with a number for the pocket and the binder. And so we just very right, you know, on the front where it says Switch on the red part, we just write the number on there so that they can find it. So we're not blocking the title of the game kind of thing. And so this has been just a few weeks that we've been doing this part of it, and it seems to be working really well.
Okay.
You know, for the games, that is, and everything. But we do have a tag on the underneath the label. I mean the art, the cover art on the package. So that if somebody does try to think that they can walk off, you know, but it's empty, but still it still will check out
Sure.
for that and everything. So, and it just says bring to circulation for checkout type of thing. So that's fairly similar. And again, Circ would have so many other things to chime in on of issues that have come up, because they are more directly with that. I'm more the behind the scenes type
Sure.
of thing, and then they get the front facing part of it.
Of course. And again, I would encourage, you know, if your Circ staff has a minute and wants to put together a quick forum post, I'm sure that, you know, other libraries could find that useful, especially with the Switch games. I think that might be certainly a thread that would be beneficial to all of the libraries that are circulating RFID Switch games, and kind of how you're handling, you know, the tagging of such a small item. Yeah, I think that those are all great. So maybe I'll seed some threads on the
That'd be great. Yep.
Yeah, I think that'd be great to get a little more kind of liven that place up a little bit and get some more discussions going for sure. Yeah, I think I'm you know, glad that things have been going well so far, and you haven't run into any significant roadblocks that I'm aware of, at least.
Yeah, and I think there's probably more roadblocks that even I'm aware of.
Sure.
You know, that sort of thing. So definitely, you know, I have a different perspective. I mean, I get like I said, the tagging part of it, and redoing those type of things, but the issues with the self checkouts and all that kind of stuff, I mean, I just hear bits and pieces at this point. And
okay.
Like I said, my manager or the Circ manager could definitely provide more information for that, and hopefully, you know, either in the threads or on the next meeting.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I would, because we only meet twice a year, so our next meeting will be in October.
Okay.
So certainly, you know, the forum is a great place to, you know, kind of put that stuff out there. And if there's questions and, or, you know, kind of how do you handle this, or how are you doing this? You know, I think that not only would benefit your library, but also a library that's maybe didn't think about posting a question, or had the same question but didn't, like, oh, I don't want to take the time to do it. You know, At least they can get, you know, pull some information from, you know, everybody else's experience. And I think that's really what we should be kind of aiming for the future of kind of SWAN RFID, is just an open discussion of how everybody's doing everything else, and see where things can be improved, or, you know, if some library has a great idea for, you know, Switch cartridges and, you know, and things like that. I think that the more we can share with each other, I think the closer that we'll get to being able to, you know, sort of find harmony within across the RFID libraries. So.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I know. My manager, I know, reached out, for asking for, the inputs before we made the decision of who to go with and that sort of thing. And of course, it still came down to we didn't understand completely the difficulty with the disc tags.
Sure.
Of how, we were assured that they would work with our foil hubs, and and it turns out there were that it wasn't necessarily the interaction with the foil hubs. I don't think it was more of just not reading. So there's always something. So
there's
yes,
always something. Yeah.
If you can make it easier for the next person, the next group to go through it, absolutely.
Yeah.
And because that's what libraries are all about, making
Exactly.
it easier, passing it along, and learning from each other. So definitely.
Definitely. Does anybody else have anything else they want to bring forward or discuss?
I think the only thing on my mind was, and I could definitely post this on the SWAN forums because it's probably a good one for that. But as I saw on the agenda that we were going to be talking about, like the AFI bit and that kind of how tags are structured, and I was like trying to think of how do I go about finding that information out. So I was using our EnvisionWare RFID software, and I was actually surprised. I didn't think it would give me as much data as it did, but it kind of tells me a little bit about what's on the tag. Yeah, I've got the AFI and I've got some other fields and stuff that I wasn't expecting to see. But if there are any software utilities, especially something that would be open source, that would let us really read the nitty gritty of a tag. I'd love to see something like that, because I remember getting ready to go into our migration to RFID and talking to vendors, and we'd spoken with Aaron Skog ahead of time, and he was just like, oh, make sure you know what your data model is going to be. So that became one of our questions for all of our vendors, prospective vendors, and they could just never give us a straight answer. And I was like, it would just be so rad if there was some kind of tag reading software, third party, that would just let me read whatever tag. And I know you guys are experimenting with some stuff on Android using NFC stuff a while back. But
I've downloaded every single RFID app in the Apple App Store, and unfortunately haven't made any significant headway with actually being able to see the tag. It'll read the tag, but it doesn't provide the information, and I haven't figured out how to say, well, here's the data model that's on the tag, or you tell me. Even just seeing the raw data, I haven't really been able to make any determinations of how this could be useful. But yeah, I agree. Something like that would be awesome, to just be able to view the raw data on the tag and just kind of get an idea of how things are structured. I haven't come across one, but if anybody else stumbles upon it, please post that up. Aaron, as far as the theft bit thread for on the forum, if you're able to kind of not only list your AFI bit and all that, but if you could do a quick synopsis of how you were able to get that information, I think that would be very helpful for the other EnvisionWare libraries, and at least that would knock one major vendor kind of out. As far as 3M and other vendors, I don't know necessarily if that's readily available. That might be something that requires a call to the vendor. It theoretically is out there, but I don't know how easy it is to find it. It might just be you need to be pointed in the right direction. But yeah, Aaron, if you could post up just a quick synopsis of how to find that tag information for EnvisionWare systems, that would be tremendous.
Cool. Yeah, we'll do.
Awesome. Anything else? If not, I'll stop the recording and we can hang out for a couple minutes. If anything else comes up, let me know. We're good. All right. Well, I'm going to stop the recording, but thank you all for joining us today. I think this was a great discussion. Have some interesting things to kind of look forward to down the road. Again, our next meeting will be in October. Don't have the date off the top of my head, but I believe it's the third Thursday in October. So we will see you all then. Again, thanks for attending, and we'll talk soon.